Okay everyone, we'll get started. You guys probably know me by now. I'm Lucy Oborn and I'm the Lease Control Manager for Maxwell Geoservices. Now if anyone has any questions, you'll see that there's a toolbar on your screen and there's a tab for questions. You're more than welcome to send any through as we go throughout the presentation, and we'll address the questions at the end. Whether you call them rent or annual fees, governments around the world require annual payments in respect of your mineral and petroleum titles. It's integral that you retain records independent of government, as we all know that errors and disputes do occur from time to time. And for this reason, we capture your compliance in LeaseControl. In this training webinar, we're going to look at how you can use LeaseControl to configure the rent calculations per title, and we're going to be doing some case studies. So first we're going to look at Quebec, which has a lot of relevancy around the world, and that's for any titles that are age dependent but have a set fee per title, and we're going to look at applying an exception based on a commodity. We're then going to look at Western Australia, which again is age dependent and a fee per unit with an exception based on size, and the Northern Territory, which has both a set fee and a fee per unit based on the area with an exception for the operational status of a title. We're also going to look at the recording the rents, the due dates per title in the action configurations, and the option for the compulsory field to auto-complete the reporting grids. We're also going to look at reports for budgeting, which includes a filter based on the liable parties. So first, the title record. Your upcoming rent payments are displayed, which are calculated based on the area of the title, the class of title, and the jurisdiction. Now that's as a bare minimum. As we'll go through, there's a few further considerations. So firstly, from your toolbar, select Settings, then from the drop-down menu, select Configuration, and then Lease Configuration, remembering that you need the administrator password to access this area due to the critical nature of its content. On the left-hand side, you will see various localities which you'll first have to set up in libraries, and you're more than welcome to contact us if you want more information on these libraries. As we're going to do Quebec first, we're going to select Canada, then Quebec, and in this case we're going to look at exclusive mining leases. You will see the screen populate with the settings for this class of title. However, we'll first concentrate on the rent tabs. Quebec's exclusive mining leases are similar to many jurisdictions because the age of the title determines what rent is payable, with some exceptions. As such, we use the rental rates, time and area tab. We'll start with the rent for the first 5 years of the life of a title. First, enter the area units from the drop-down menu, even when the area of the title doesn't affect this rent calculation, as it allows the system to filter which titles this is applied to. And then we enter, in this case, the base cost, because the area of the title doesn't affect the rent calculation. That is, it's a set fee per title. We then stipulate the time frame to which the rent applies, which in this case is from year 1 through to year 5. Then, as rent schedules do change from time to time, we stipulate the date at which this particular schedule became effective. For our purposes here, I'm going to say that it was the 1st of July 2015. When you press enter on your keyboard, the row moves into the grid. You then complete the rest of the schedule in a similar manner. You'll recall that there was an exception to the rule, and this was for those titles of the same class but that were granted in respect of peat moss. As we click at the side of any row, the bottom grid will become available for entry. As before, you enter into the top row and then press enter to move it into the grid. As you can see, we've made the area from 0 to 9999 as the area of the title doesn't have any relevance to the calculation in this instance. From here we're adding a filter. After all, this only applies to peat leases. So you double click in the filter field and a window pops up where you can enter the relevant filter. In this case, if the primary commodity is equal to peat, the filter will apply. We can then build on the filter if we want to by using the AND and OR field. Pressing OK, we are returned to our original screen. We simply complete this bottom grid per row in the top grid and then we're done. So that's Quebec, the process for which applies to every title that has a set rent fee per title, noting that filter can be used for a variety of different purposes. I am going to show you how to automatically update the rent fields for all the titles. However, I'll quickly show you Western Australia and Northern Territory examples for rent first. Again, the system for these titles apply to many other jurisdictions, including parts of Americas and Africa. As before, you will need to access the lease configurations. This time we'll be accessing West Australian exploration licences using the Rental Rates, Time and Area tab as before, as the rent is dependent on the age and area of the licence. As before, enter the details into the top row and press Enter on your keyboard to move into the grid, noting that this time we use the cost per unit instead of the base cost, as this fee applies per unit, which in this case is per block, rather than a fee per title. We also used round area this time. Where a title consists of a part unit, in this case part of a particular block, the fee is applicable as if it were a whole unit. Therefore, we tick this to tell LeaseControl that if the area is not a whole number, to round the area up to the next whole number, therefore calculating the rent. Now, the exception to the rule in this case are those titles that are between 1 and 3 years old if they consist of a single block. After rounding, a different area applies, a different rent applies. Therefore, we highlight this row and enter the details into the bottom grid. I also like to make a note in the top grid for ease of reference for other users, but this is completely optional. You can then continue on with the remainder of the necessary configurations. Just briefly, you will note that the exploration licences whose areas are not governed by particular blocks, in this case instead measured by square kilometres, can also be entered into the rent grid without any issue. LeaseControl is smart enough to look for the area type that matches the title when calculating the rent. That's Western Australia, the process for which applies to every title that has a rent fee per unit of area, noting that again the filter can be used for many different purposes. Quickly to the Northern Territory before we automatically update the rent fields for all titles, noting that this methodology applies again to many other jurisdictions. In this case, as we'll be doing the Northern Territory, we're going to do the extractive mineral permits. And we're going to use the Rental Rates, Time and Area tab as before. This is really your most used rent calculation facility due to the flexibility of the override function using the bottom grid. In this case, we're going to be doing an override for those titles that are subject to rehabilitation. As we did previously, we enter the rent into the top grid, noting that in this case there is a set fee per title, which in this case is called an administration fee, in addition to the rent calculation based on the area. We then complete the override function, noting that there is a different cost per unit before adding the filter. In this case, we've used the internal status field to denote the title's operational status. So it can be care and maintenance, subject to mining, or in this case, rehabilitation and closure. However, as different companies have different requirements, there's several other fields which may be used for this purpose so that titles can be filtered accordingly. And if you'd like to discuss the best fit for your business, you're more than welcome to give us a call. We do offer mentoring services to assist in developing these systems. That's Northern Territory, although as mentioned it applies to other jurisdictions. Now we know you're not going to want to go into every title and update the rent, so we have a cheat sheet for you to do it automatically. This time in Query Builder, which is located under the Tools bar in your main menu, we're going to filter for the relevant titles and then tell LeaseControl to do a bulk update of rent. In Query Builder, the report heading is optional. In this case we're querying leases and we want to show the basic lease data. In this case I want to do only the Quebec exclusive mining leases, and so I've entered the locality as a filter, noting that I could have select Quebec from the drop-down menu. However, I wanted to show you the multiple option that you have for each line item. In this case, I've opted for a second filter so that I'm only looking at the one class of title. Again, this is optional. I then click on Show Results, and the Query Builder gives me my results based on the filters, in this case, for titles. You'll see that there are a few options from here. However, in this case, we're going to select Update Rents. And the system checks to make sure we're happy with our list of leases before we continue. And then the rents will be automatically updated. Within each title record, the previous rent calculation has been updated. So that's the big job done. Some brief notes next on the due date and the optional completion fields. Back into lease configurations. Pick the locality and lease that you're after, and this time we're going to be looking at actions. As before, enter your action settings into the top row, then press enter to move it into the grid. In this example, I've entered that it repeats each 12 months and occurs 30 days after the anniversary grant date. However, this is dependent on the particular government policy and perhaps your own internal company policy as well. The critical part is that we have noted rent as the completion process. This means that when you complete this rent action, you are prompted for the relevant details. When you complete this rent action, they will automatically populate the rent grid in LeaseControl's record, in the lease record, as well as the rent browser. You can pull a report on payments from here or a more comprehensive report through Query Builder, which we'll show you next. A brief look at reporting, which is useful for budgeting purposes. Back in Query Builder, we can build a report looking at rents payable moving forward by using the current lease data, noting that we've added an optional filter so that we only see those rents we're responsible for. Or we can build a report looking at rents payable moving forward by using the current lease, by using other lease data. We've, in this case, added an optional filter for rents that were paid after the 1st of July 2015, and as before, clicking Show Results will provide us a list of the relevant rent payments, which we can export as we see fit. And that is the last of our training for this module. For further information on LeaseControl or other complementary systems developed by Maxwell, please feel welcome to contact us for discussion. We have a variety of off-the-shelf and tailor-made programs to assist in managing your business. I'll just give everyone a couple of minutes to ask any questions they may have, and then we'll go through those. Hi everyone, we've only had the one question and that's regarding circulating a copy of this webinar, and yes, we'll be more than happy to do so. For those that are interested, please let us know and we will send it through to you.